The Gormenghast Trilogy by Mervyn Peake. Book 1. Titus Groan. Meanwhile, Part 2. The doctor, meanwhile, lay in a state of perfect contentment in a hot bath filled with blue crystals. The bath was veined marble and was long enough to allow the doctor to lie at full length. Only his quill-like face emerged above the perfumed surface of the water. His hair was filled with winking lather bubbles, and his eyes were indescribably roguish. His face and neck were bright pink as though direct from a celluloid factory. At the far end of the bath, one of his feet emerged from the depths. He watched it quizzically, with his head cocked so far upon one side that his left ear filled with water.
"Sweet foot," he cried. 5 toes to boot, and what not, in the beetroot shoot."
He raised himself and shook the hot water gaily from his ear and began swishing the water on either side of his body. The eyes closed and the mouth opened, and all the teeth were there, shining through the steam. Taking a great breath, or rather a deep breath, for his chest was too narrow for a great one, and with a smile of dreadful bliss irradiating his pink face, the doctor emitted a whinny of so piercing a quality that Irma, seated at her boudoir table, shot to her feet, scattering hairpins across the carpet. She had been at her toilet for the last 3 hours, excluding the preliminary hour and a half spent in her bath, and now, as she swished her way to the bedroom door, a frown disturbing the powder on her brow, she had, in common with her brother, more the appearance of having been plucked or peeled than of cleanliness, though clean she was, scrupulously clean, in the sense of a rasher of bacon.
"What on earth is the matter with you? I said, what on earth is the matter with you, Bernard?"
she shouted through the bathroom keyhole.
"Is that you, my love? Is that you?"
Her brother's voice came thinly from behind the door.
"Who else would it be? I said, who else would it be?"
she yelled back, bending herself into a stiff satin right angle in order to get her mouth to the keyhole. Came her brother's shrill, unbearable laughter.
"Who else, indeed? Well, let us think. Let us think. It might be the moon goddess, but that's improbable. Or it might be a sword swallower approaching me in my professional capacity. That is less improbable. In fact, my dear Taproot, have you by any chance been swallowing swords for years on end without ever telling me? Or haven't you?"
His voice rose.
"Years on end and swords on end. Where will it end if our ears unbend? What shall I spend on a wrinkled friend in a pair of tights like a bunch of lights?"
Irma, who had been straining her ears, cried out at last in her irritation.
"I suppose you know you'll be late. I said I suppose you—" "Oh, a merry plague upon you, O blood of my blood!"
the shrill voice broke in.
"What is time, O sister of similar features, that you speak of it so subserviently? Are we to be the slaves of the sun, that second-hand overrated knob of guilt, or of his sister, that fatuous circle of silver paper? A curse upon their ridiculous dictatorship! What say you, Irma, my Irma, wrapped in rumour, Irma, of the incandescent tumour?"
he trilled happily, and his sister rose, rustling to her full height, arching her nostrils as she did so, as though they itched with pedigree. Her brother annoyed her, and as she seated herself again before the mirror in her boudoir, she made noises like a lady as she applied the powder puff for the 100th time to her spotless length of neck.
"Sourdust will be there too," said Mrs. Slagg, "because he knows all about things. He knows what order you do things in, precious, and when you must start doing them, and when you ought to stop."
"Is that everyone?" asked Fuchsia.
"Oh, don't hurry me,"
replied the old nurse, pursing her lips into a prune of wrinkles.
"Oh, can you wait a minute? Yes, that makes 5, and you make 6, and his little lordship makes 7,
"And you make 8, said Fuchsia. "So you make the most."
Make the most of what, my caution?
It doesn't matter, said Fuchsia. While in various parts of the castle, these 8 persons were getting ready for the gathering, the twins were sitting bolt upright on the couch, watching Steerpike drawing the cork out of a slim, dusty bottle. He held it securely between his feet, and bending over with the corkscrew firmly embedded, was easing the cork from the long, black, cormorant throat. Having unwound the corkscrew and placed the undamaged cork on the mantelpiece, he emptied a little of the wine into a glass and tasted it with a critical expression on his pale face. The aunts leaned forward, their hands on their knees, watching every movement. Steerpike took one of the doctor's silk handkerchiefs from his pocket and wiped his mouth. Then he held the wine-glass up to the light for a long time and studied its translucence. "What's wrong with it?" said Clarisse slowly. "Is it poisoned?" said Cora. "Who poisoned it?" echoed Clarisse. "Gertrude," said Cora. "She'd kill us if she could." "But she can't," said Clarisse. "And that's why we're going to be powerful." "And proud," added Clarisse. "Yes, because of today. Because of today." They joined their hands. "It is a good vintage, your ladyship, a very adequate vintage. I selected it myself. You will, I know, appreciate it fully. It is not poisoned, my dear women. Gertrude, though she has poisoned your lives, has not, as it so happens, poisoned this particular bottle of wine. May I pour you out a glassful each, and we will drink a toast to the business of the day?" "Yes, yes," said Cora. "Do it now." Steerpike filled their glasses. "Stand up," he said. The purple twins rose together, and as Steerpike was about to propose the toast, his right hand holding the glass on the level of his chin and his left hand in his pocket, Cora's flat voice broke in. "Let's drink it on our tree," she said. "It's lovely outside. On our tree." Clarisse turned to her sister with her mouth open. Her eyes were as expressionless as mushrooms. "That's what we'll do," she said. Steerpike, instead of being annoyed, was amused by the idea. After all, this was an important day for him. He had worked hard to get all in readiness, and he knew that his future hung upon the smooth working of his plan. And although he would not congratulate himself until the library was in ashes, he felt that it was up to him and the aunts to relax for a few minutes before the work that lay ahead. To drink a toast to the day upon the boughs of the dead tree appealed to his sense of the dramatic, the appropriate, and the ridiculous. A few minutes later, the 3 of them had passed through the room of roots, filed along the horizontal stem, and sat down at the table. As they sat, Steerpike in the middle and the twins at either side, the evening air was motionless beneath them and around. The aunts had apparently no fear of the dizzy drop. They never thought of it. Steerpike, although he was enjoying the situation to the full, nevertheless averted his eyes as far as possible from the sickening space below him. He decided to deal gently with the bottle. On the wooden table, their 3 glasses glowed in the warm light. 30 feet away, the sunny south wall towered above and fell below them, featureless from its base to its summit, save for the lateral offshoots of this dead tree, halfway up its surface on which they sat, and the exquisitely pencilled shadows of its branches. "Firstly, dear ladyships," said Steerpike, rising to his feet and fixing his eyes upon the shadow of a coiling bough, "firstly, I propose a health to you, to your steadfast purpose and the faith you have in your own destinies, to your courage, your intelligence, your beauty." He raised his glass. "I drink," he said, and took a sip. Clarisse began to drink at the same moment, but Cora nudged her elbow. "Not yet," she said. "Next, I must propose a toast to the future, primarily to the immediate future, to the task we have resolved to carry through today, to its success, and also to the great days that will result from it, the days of your reinstatement, the days of your power and glory." Ladies, to the future! Cora, Clarice, and Steerpike lifted their elbows to drink. The warm air hung about them, and as Cora's raised elbow struck her sister's and jogged the wineglass from her hand, and as it rolled from the table to the tree, and from the tree out into the hollow air, the western sunlight caught it as it fell, glittering through the void.